The great assembly hall of the Star Alliance was quiet. It was a huge room made for the leaders of every advanced world in the galaxy. But one chair was always empty. It belonged to a race that had been wiped from history, a race the Alliance once feared. Now, as leaders gathered urgently, that chair was still unoccupied, yet its emptiness felt heavier than ever. The galaxy was falling apart. Planets were burning. Armies were being destroyed. A new enemy had come out of nowhere, stronger and more brutal than any before. They were called the Draith. Their ships crushed every defense. Their soldiers left nothing behind but ashes. The Alliance's smartest minds tried everything. Plans, backup plans, last chances, nothing worked. Now the room was silent, filled with hopeless faces. No one had answers. "This is the end," said Chancellor Saren. Her voice shook. "We have lost." A quiet murmur spread around the room. No one argued. But then one voice stood out. "There is still one chance left." All eyes turned to Elder Jalen, one of the oldest members of the Alliance. His skin was faded with age, and he spoke carefully, like he feared his own words. Saren frowned. "There's no army left strong enough, no weapon powerful enough. What are you suggesting?" Jalen took a slow breath. "We call for help." Some council members laughed. Others shook their heads. "A call for help?" said General Azek. "We've already asked every known world. No one dares fight the Draith." "Not every world," Jalen said softly. The room went quiet again. A chill filled the air. "No," Saren said, shaking her head. "That is not an option." "Would you rather we all be destroyed?" Jalen asked. Saren clenched her jaw but said nothing. "They were erased for a reason," someone whispered. "We can't bring them back." "They were erased," Jalen replied, "because we feared them, because we couldn't control them." Silence again. Then Saren spoke in a whisper. "Humans." The word made the air feel heavy. Long ago, humans had been part of the Star Alliance. But they were different. They thought differently. They fought differently. They didn't follow rules. When the council couldn't handle them anymore, they erased their existence, cut them off, deleted all records, and forgot. Or so they thought. "If they're still out there," Jalen said, "they might be our only hope." Saren breathed out slowly. "And if they're not?" No one answered. Deep down, everyone knew the truth. If the humans were truly gone, the Alliance was finished. The council started to argue again. Loud voices, fear and doubt filling the air. But deep inside, they all knew they were out of time. In the end, they made a choice. A message was sent. A desperate signal into deep space aimed at an old relay station that hadn't been used in ages. It was believed to be dead. But then, it turned on, and someone answered. A human voice. The message had gone into the unknown, a final cry for help. No one expected a reply, but the council chamber went completely silent as the voice played through the speakers, deep, calm, and strong. "You finally remembered us." Everyone in the room looked around nervously. There was no name, no image, just a voice filled with something ancient and dangerous. Saren stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Who are we speaking to?" There was a pause. Then came the reply. "Someone who remembers." Jalen leaned forward. "Are you human?" A soft chuckle. "And if I am?" Saren grabbed the side of her seat. "The Star Alliance is under attack. We're asking for your help." Silence again. "You're asking for help," the voice repeated. "After everything?" Some members looked away, embarrassed. The voice continued. "You pushed us out, erased us from your history, acted like we never existed." Jalen spoke quickly. "That's true. But now, and now that your empires are falling and your armies are gone, now you call us?" No one said a word. The voice paused, then continued. "Very well." Jalen blinked. "You'll help us?" The voice sounded almost amused. "I didn't say that." Saren's heart pounded. "Then what do you mean?" "I want to see for myself." A location appeared on the screen. Meet me here, the voice said. Come alone, no ships, no tricks. Saren hesitated. And if we don't? Then you already have your answer. The message ended. For several long moments, no one spoke. Then the room exploded into argument. This is crazy, shouted General Azek. We can't trust them. It might be a trap. Jalen stood. What choice do we have? Saren stared at the dark screen. Then she said, I will go. The room fell silent. Jalen turned to her. Chancellor, you can't. I will go, she repeated firmly. I sent the call. I'll face the answer. The location was set. A small ship was prepared, and as Saren stepped aboard, she had a strange feeling, like she was heading into something far bigger than herself. Something old. Something human. Saren sat alone in the dim light of her ship's cockpit. The stars outside stretched forever, cold and silent. She had left Alliance space, heading to a place that didn't exist on any maps. The coordinates took her to an old star system, circling a dying red sun. Her scanners picked up one thing, an ancient space station floating quietly in the dark. It was huge, even bigger than anything the Alliance had ever made. But its surface was old, marked by time. She paused, then sent a message. This is Chancellor Saren of the Star Alliance. I came as requested. Silence. Then, the same calm voice replied. Dock at the main hangar. Saren's claws tightened. No security checks, no scans. Either they trusted her completely, or they didn't see her as a threat. She docked the ship. No guards waited, no greetings. Just the soft hum of old machines keeping the station alive. She stepped out. The floor echoed under her feet. At the far end stood a single figure, human. Saren had only seen them in ancient records, always blurry, always distant, like even history wanted to forget them. But this one was real. Tall, wide-shouldered, wearing a long black coat that looked older than the station. His face was weathered with age, but his eyes held something deep, something that made Saren shiver. He remembered. She walked forward carefully. Are you the one who answered? The human looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke. I am. Same voice. Calm, steady, hard to read. Saren stood tall. Will you help us? He gave a small, cold smile. That depends. She swallowed. On what? He stepped closer, and the air seemed heavier. On whether you deserve to be saved. Saren's heart pounded. We're at war. Our people are dying. The human raised a hand, stopping her. I know. He turned and walked toward the exit of the hangar. Come with me, he said. There's something I want to show you. Saren hesitated, but she had come this far. She followed him. The station was old. Its walls were covered in strange markings, symbols from a forgotten time. As they walked, the human spoke. Your people left us, he said quietly. You called us dangerous, unpredictable, a threat. Saren's voice was low. That was before my time. I had no part in it. He stopped and turned to face her. And yet here you are, asking for help. She looked him in the eye. Because we have no other choice. He studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. They arrived at a large window. Outside, in the dark of space, floated something that made Saren stop in her. Tracks. Ships. Not Alliance ships. Human warships. Hundreds of them. Dark, silent, powerful. No symbols, no flags. Just old scars from forgotten battles. They had been here for ages, hidden, but ready. Saren whispered, You still have a fleet? The human looked at her, unreadable. We never left. For the first time, fear touched Saren, not of the enemy, but of the force her people had, once abandoned. The humans were still here, and they were prepared. Saren couldn't stop staring at the ships. They were massive, sharp-edged, made for war. Even after all these years, they looked alive, like they were just waiting for the order to move. She whispered, This changes everything. The human stood beside her, silent. Then he asked, "You didn't know, did you? You thought we were gone?" Saren nodded slowly. "Our record said humans disappeared, that you were no longer a threat." His face didn't change, but there was a coldness in his eyes. "They wanted us gone," he said. "So they erased us." Saren felt a chill. The Alliance had always taught that humans were wild, uncontrollable. They were given a choice: exile or destruction. History said they chose exile and vanished. But that wasn't true. They had never left. They had waited. The human turned and motioned for her to follow. She walked with him through the station. It was quiet, old, still working after all this time, powered by ancient systems. Finally, they reached a war room, a large table lit up, with holograms, maps of the galaxy, battle zones, enemy fleets. Saren froze. "How do you have all this?" The human sat at the table, tapping controls. "Your enemies watch you, so we watched them." She was stunned. Humans had been observing everything, learning, preparing. "You know how desperate we are," she said. He nodded. "Then help us. Fight with us." The human was silent, then slowly shook his head. "No." Saren's heart dropped. "Why?" He stood up and stared at her with intensity. "You think you can just call us when you're losing? Where was the Alliance when we needed help?" She had no answer. "You exiled us, feared us, hunted us. And now you come begging?" He laughed, softly, but there was no humor in it. "Tell me, Chancellor, why should we?" Saren swallowed hard. Everything he said was true. The Alliance had betrayed them. And now, humans held the power to decide their future. She forced herself to speak. "Because this war will destroy everything, even you." The human watched her for a long moment. Then finally he said, "Maybe." He turned back to the map. "There's only one way we fight." Hope flickered in her chest. "Name it." His voice was low. "We don't fight for you." He looked at her again. "We fight as humanity." Saren stood still, trying to understand. "What does that mean?" she asked. The human didn't answer right away. He walked back to the war table and tapped the display. A new image appeared, a flag. Old and worn, a human flag. Saren's voice was quiet. "You want the Alliance to submit?" He gave a short laugh. "Submit? No. But if we fight, it's on our terms." His voice grew firm. "No rules, no control, no one telling us what to do." Saren's fists clenched. "You're asking for independence," he looked at her calmly. "We were never part of your alliance." She couldn't argue. The Alliance had thrown humanity away long ago, labeling them as a threat too dangerous to handle. They had expected them to fade into history, but humans didn't fade. They endured. Saren took a deep breath. "If I bring this to the Council, they won't agree." The human smirked. "Then you'll lose your war." The way he said it sent chills down her spine. He wasn't threatening. He was telling the truth. Saren focused. "What would your war look like?" The human said nothing at first. Then he tapped the map again. Red marks lit up. Enemy bases, fleets, supply lines. One by one they disappeared in simulations, not slow invasions. Swift, silent, brutal. "This war goes on because you follow rules," he said. "We don't." Saren watched in awe. These weren't normal battles. They were targeted eliminations, no warnings, no mercy. Enemy forces wiped out in hours. A war not fought for peace, but to win. She whispered, "You could really do this?" Nodded. "We already have the plans." Saren's mind raced. The Alliance had fought for years, always losing ground. But humans had been waiting, ready. She stood tall. "If I deliver your terms to the Council, they must understand." He looked at her seriously. If they agree, we fight as our own force, not under your flag. And when the war ends, we owe you nothing. Saren hesitated. The council would never accept that. But if they refused, they would lose everything. She drew a breath. I'll deliver your message. The human nodded once. Then let's see if your people truly want to win. The council chamber was quiet, not peaceful, but heavy with fear. Saren stood before them, her heart heavy. The screen beside her showed everything. The battle plans, the simulations, the unstoppable force that humanity could unleash. Each red mark, an enemy base, a shipyard, a stronghold, vanished in seconds under human strategy. No drawn-out fights. Just total destruction. She faced the council. You've seen what they can do. No one replied. Some couldn't even look at her. At last, the Supreme Speaker, a thin, sharp-eyed elder, spoke. These humans, they would destroy everything. Saren nodded. Yes, they fight without holding back, without mercy. Another member, General Ress, a cold-blooded reptilian, hissed. They're warmongers. They want freedom to do as they please. And when the war ends, how do we stop them? Murmurs of fear swept through the room. Saren's voice stayed calm. You don't. She stepped forward. That's the cost. We exiled them, left them, alone for centuries. And they survived, without us. She looked around. Now we are losing. We've begged. We've tried everything. But the humans, they know how to win. Silence followed. Then an old voice asked, and if we say no? Saren looked each member in the eye, then prepared to surrender, because without them, we have nothing. The room exploded. Some shouted that humans were worse than the enemy. Others screamed that there was no other choice. But Saren already knew. The war was lost. Only humanity could change that. And they would. But nothing would be the same again. The decision was made, a message was sent, and humanity answered. There were no speeches, no peace talks, just the sudden arrival of warships, massive, quiet, armed with weapons unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. Saren stood on the bridge of the Alliance's flagship, staring at the screen as the human fleet appeared in perfect formation. Every ship moved with precision as if they had practiced this 1,000 times. The main screen blinked on. One human stood there, dressed in black. No medals, no rank, just cold, focused eyes. This war ends now, he said. The Supreme Speaker stepped forward. You know what we face? We know, the human cut in. And we don't care about your politics, your fears, or your rules. His eyes scanned the room. We were given one condition, total control. You agreed, so don't question our methods. Saren's stomach twisted. This was what she had fought for, what she had begged for. And now, the humans were here, not as allies, as a storm. The speaker asked, what do you need from us? The human's voice didn't change. All data on the enemy, every file, every secret, everything. The speaker hesitated. The human leaned forward slightly. You called us. Now let us do what we were made to do. A slow nod came in reply. Saren let out a shaky breath. The battle didn't last weeks, not even days, just hours. The enemy fleet, once feared, once unbeatable, was gone. Their warships shattered, their command destroyed. All that remained was wreckage floating through the void. The humans had moved like a blade, clean, fast, and deadly. Every strike was precise. No mistakes, no mercy. Saren stood on the command deck surrounded by what was left of the Alliance leadership. Her hands trembled. They had won. But the cost felt invisible and heavy. The main screen lit up again. The human commander appeared, still wearing the same black uniform, still calm. It's done, he said. The Supreme Speaker tried to speak. On behalf of the Alliance, we... The human raised a hand. Save your thanks. His voice was cold. You called us when you had no one else. We answered. Now we're done. Saren stepped forward. But the Alliance must rebuild. We still need allies. The human stared at her, his eyes hard. We are not your allies. The chamber went quiet again. The speaker's voice cracked. Then, what are you? The human breathed out, shook his head, a warning, and then he was gone. The screen went black. Moments later, the human fleet disappeared, silent as shadows, vanishing into the stars like they had never been there. But one truth remained behind. The seat that once belonged to humanity would remain forever empty. The war was over. But peace didn't follow. Not right away. The Galactic Alliance began rebuilding. Worlds in ruins, cities gone, fleets shattered. But something else had changed, something deeper. Fear. Not of the enemy, of the humans. They had saved the galaxy, crushed the invincible, ended the war in hours. But they had done it alone, on their own terms. No orders, no alliances, no promises, and now, they were gone again. No messages, no base, no known location, just silence. Yet their shadow remained. Every council meeting, every decision, every plan, the memory of what humanity had done hung in the air like a ghost. Leaders spoke carefully, now about power, about control, about trust. And always someone would glance at the empty chair in the council chamber, the one they had erased from history. It stayed empty, but no one dared remove it again, because deep down they all knew humanity hadn't vanished. They had simply waited, and if they returned once more, they wouldn't come to ask, they'd come to decide.